Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about Never Knock, the 2017 horror movie. So I don't know if this is a direct to streaming, well, it's not direct to DVD because I can't find it on there, or like, a TV movie, but I'm probably going to assume it's direct to streaming because I've never seen it come out theatrically. And so, like, this movie is actually pretty freaking awesome, in my opinion. Like, it's really good. If they would have had a stronger budget or a bigger budget and just a little bit more stronger writing and a tad bit better acting, this could have went theatrical, in my opinion, and it probably could have been the next, like, horror classic. you know and so, but I give it kudos, man. This was like actually pretty freaking good and everything. Like, I really enjoyed this movie and stuff. Like, I've had this on Tubi for like years, just never like watched it because I've been like way too busy. Now you can watch it on Tubi or you can watch it on Roku TV channel and stuff. And I'm actually surprised at the person who wrote and directed this movie because I just bashed his other movie the other night. And that's Sheldon Wilson. Yes, Sheldon Wilson, the same man who created a year prior to this movie, A Night Before Halloween. Now, I had my problems with A Night with Halloween, but I still thought it was a pretty okay movie. It's just, it was extremely confusing. And I had some problems with like his portrayal of people of color, which I will have to say, this movie is much of an improvement on writing, the origin of like the monster. And I kind of understand now his pattern of like horror. He likes teens running around. He likes movie monsters, or some type of weird bug-like entity and stuff. And he has the kid being the only survivor. However, the dude still has a problem when it comes to writing people of color. I get it. You write the movie first, you cast later and stuff like that. Or sometimes it's the reverse. But I'm pretty sure he wrote first and then they cast it around later. But once you start to see there are people of color in your movie, then that's when you need to start rewriting stuff. Because once again, in my opinion, he has failed his people of color. And it's kind of like, because there's a weird subplot that goes absolutely nowhere with the only two people of color. Because his movies tend to only have two people of color in it, I've noticed. And like it's like a weird subplot that goes absolutely nowhere. I assume this subplot was being brought back up later on in the movie, especially when it has to do with a person's fear being manifested and stuff, but it never does. And that doesn't make no sense. So why add this in like the movie? Like, it was extremely pointless, but I guess he needed his people of color to actually do something because they don't do nothing in this movie for the most part. Everybody else, while they have like, hey, what you see is what you get, and that's how they are through the rest of the movie, at least they have something to do. You know what I'm saying? So I really wish if he makes another movie in general, just make it all white. Like, just make the movie all white and don't add a person of color. Because the dude clearly can't write for people of color. But I do give it up because this movie is a lot more scarier than like The Night Before Halloween. Like, it's a lot more engaging. It's not confusing for the most part. Like, you do wonder what the heck is this little monster thing and why it's in the house, but you never truly get an answer. That's once again a problem with his writing. While we do get an origin story for the monster, like, it's connected not to the house but to the door of the house, which is really fascinating. It's kind of like a little R.L. Stein twist to it. Because there's been multiple killings in different houses over, like, I guess the decades or centuries and stuff. or probably like the centuries or whatever. But it's like, because the door, like, I guess, gets moved from one house to another. But the question is, who's exactly moving it? But then you kind of get a little bit of a clue towards the end, just a tiny bit, but it's a slight confusion and stuff. So while his writing, when it comes to that of an origin story for like his monster, got a heck of a lot better, there's still just a slight bit of confusion, but just a slight bit. Also, like, kids running or teens running around the, like, neighborhood from a monster was really cool. My only problem was it does need a bigger budget because of the simple fact that think about it like this movie is a cross between it and A Nightmare on Elm Street. And so, but it doesn't have the budget of either of those movies or the creativity of what it is they're afraid of. So you get very generic, like, special effects to whatever it is they're afraid of. Snakes. Okay, you got a couple of snakes crawling around a person's leg. Well, instead of like, 5, why not make it 15 or 50? Like, have snakes coming everywhere, or a person turn into a snake. This one person's afraid of bugs. Okay, you get a couple of CGI cockroaches coming out of a person's mouth and a bunch of maggots on like a person's cell phone. Why not amp up like how many bugs it is, or have like a giant bug? This one dude's afraid of blood, so it just drips down from a person's forehead and eyes and the car windshield. Why not have like gushing blood everywhere like Evil Dead? And so, they really could have amped up those like fear factors. Also, something they could have amped up was when the one boy is getting tossed around like the walls and everything. I do appreciate that. He's on wires and stuff. It moves so slow. And I'm all like, you want to see fast whipping like thrown around, not like really slow pace whipping around, because then it just makes it feel kind of weird. And another thing that could have benefited from the budget was, while the monster was cool looking and everything, has eyes on the side of his head where his normal eyes should be, is like blacking out so the actor can see. You can clearly tell it's just a person wearing a leather rubbery suit. Like, for the most part, the design is really cool. But once again, you can kind of tell somebody's wearing a suit because when they walk around, because they do the backwards, upside down crab walking thing, you can see the cringes in like the suit around the joints of like the arm and shoulder area. Again, I appreciate a practical suit as opposed to CGI. A little CGI would have helped it out. Or like not do so much close-up shots when it's like crab walking, because it crab walks throughout the entire movie except for the very, very ending when it's upright. And when it's crab walking all between people, that is kind of eerie because can't nobody see it unless you're affected by the curse. So when it's creeping around, that is pretty scary, but it moves so slow and everything when it's crab walking. And, and there's another part of the movie that doesn't make no sense when I'll get to that a little bit later. Now, in terms of the acting is, sorry about that, I had to kill a spider. The acting is pretty okay. Like, for the most part, it's a little 50-50. My only problem with the acting is that a lot of the cast needs a little bit more oomph into their acting and stuff. And like, especially when all the horror stuff is happening, because some of them, they'll say their lines just a little flat at times, and then other times they will be like really good, but then other times they'll just say their like lines pretty flat. And it's just kind of like, never have that flatness in your dialogue when you're acting and stuff. And especially when the horror stuff is happening, you have to do all that screaming and hollering, just amp it up a little bit. So that falls on both the person acting and the director for not getting the performance that they need out of their stars. I'm also happy that I recognize the majority of the cast, even though one person I've seen before, but I just don't remember them. But like, I'm really happy and excited. I do recognize the majority of the cast, like I said before. Like I remember this one girl from like The Haunting Hour. And I remember Kiana, I think her name is. She was in the Fear Street movies. She's also the new voice of Supergirl from My Adventures of Superman. And also she was in Sheldon's like A Night Before Halloween. And once again, he wrote her very crappy. Like, I don't understand that crap. So the movie starts off in 1986, and there are these two teens and a little boy. And so they're playing around like a cemetery. And the older brother's being a little bit of a jerk and wants his little brother to, like, he wants to scare him basically. But instead, the little brother, him and the older brother's girlfriend prank the older brother. That's another thing with Sheldon movies. There's always like a prank. He has that R.L. Stein-ish type writing to him, which I do appreciate. There's always like the siblings. There's always like somebody pulling a prank. There's always that twist, the monster element and stuff. And so like they go to this house. Now, this house is supposed to be like haunted, and a lot of kids are like scared of it, right? And so the little boy decides to knock on the door, but he cuts his hand on the door while knocking on it. It opens by itself, and like I think the little boy gets like dragged inside by something, but you don't know what. So the older brother goes in looking for his brother. Moments later, you see the girlfriend like running into the street as people are trick-or-treating for Halloween, trying to explain what happened to this police officer called Officer Rance. And so like she starts to freak out because she can see snakes all around like her legs, and they're starting to crawl around her neck and crush it. But the officer and nobody else can't see nothing. Then the snakes crush her neck because it constricted around it and killed her. He heads back into the house to where she said all this happened. And so like when he goes inside, he sees the older brother being tossed around the walls, and then he dies. Carved into his back is the words, "Never, never knock." So then every decade later and every year, pretty much every year, kids go back to this house, they knock on it because that's the legend of the house, and they want to see if something bad is going to happen to them. But nothing bad ever happens to them. So there's a new family in the neighborhood who's been there for a while, and they are our new like protagonists. There is Grace, played by Dominic Provost-Chalkley. Now, I'm unfamiliar with their work and never seen them in nothing. I believe they are British/Canadian, maybe, or something. I know they have British in them, and they do a really good American accent. And so she is a closeted, well, Grace, not Dominic. Grace is a closeted lesbian who's in a relationship with Leah, I believe it is. I have to double check that. And so Grace is grieving over the loss of her mother. Basically, she was in the car with her mom as a passenger, and the car set on fire, and Grace was unable to save her mom before dying. She lives with her father, who we never see in the movie, and her little sister, Jenna. Jenna is played by Lola Flannery. And I remember her from the 100 and Shadowhunters. And so, like, let's see, when she was on the 100, she was really young, and she's young in this movie. I'm trying to think. I think she was maybe a teenager in this movie, and she has to be like a preteen in this movie. I don't know. She's really short, so I'm not really sure how old she is in this movie. But I remember in Shadowhunters, she might have been a kid as well. And so, like, she plays like the little sister, the daring, brave sister who's like never afraid of nothing. But even though she misses her mom, she doesn't grieve over her. So they are accompanied by their friends to go trick or treating because, Jenna has to go with somebody. And so they're accompanied by that of Leah, Grace's girlfriend, played by that of, trying to think, Jodella Furlan. And I remember her in The Haunting Hour when she played like a witch. She's also, I remember her from Messengers when she played the little kid. She played a little boy who died early at the beginning in the movie. She was also in one of those Twilight movies, but I didn't see the one she was in because after the first Twilight movie, I just never wanted to watch another, and I never will. I'm not even curious to know how it ends. In The Haunting Hour, I believe she was a teenager. This is my first time ever seeing her in anything as an adult. I've always wondered what race is this girl? Because she always looks like she's half Asian or something, but I have absolutely no idea. And so she plays that of Grace's girlfriend. She's brave, she's caring, she will do anything for her girlfriend. And so they're a really loving couple, but you never see them kiss in this movie. They're accompanied by their friend Amy, played by Kiana Madarina. She was also in The Night Before Halloween. She was also in the Fear Street movies as like the lead. And she is currently the voice of Supergirl, I believe, in My Adventures with Superman. Honestly, those Fear Street movies were the best horror movies she's ever been in. I still love those Fear Street movies. She was the lead protagonist and everything. She had way more to do than what she's been doing in Sheldon's movies. Here, she's just a friend and a floozy. And Night Before Halloween, she was just a selfish person who was willing to kill and try to get her friend killed because they was cursed. Ilana Jones played Sydney. She's just the girlfriend to the one guy, and I don't know, she's just kind of there. There's not much to her. She's a little selfish, not wanting to look for Jenna when Jenna goes lost. Remember this actress from Shorzy, but I don't really remember her. Like, I've seen the entire show and she's in it, but I don't remember her. Her boyfriend Galvin is played by Varun Savega. I think that's how you say his name. He plays like, the boyfriend and everything. And like, he's kind of just there, and he's a floozy as well, cheating on that of Sydney. And so as they're going trick-or-treating and everything, they tell Grace the legend of like the never-knock house, right? And so being a little like kid and everything, Jenna decides, screw that, I'm going to the house. So she runs up there, she hops over the gate, but she cuts her arm on the gate. And so she's bleeding really bad, and so she's about to knock, but her sister hops the gate and stops her. But she does it anyway, and she knocks 3 times. Now, this is what's really odd and interesting, right? The door pops open, and like everybody's like scared and whatnot, and so I think she might have got dragged in, but they got her out, and so they all take off running and hop over the gate, but then all of a sudden they can't find Jenna. and they find a piece of her costume, which is a devil costume, on the ground just a few feet away. So they assume she's not in the house and that she's wandering around somewhere. So Grace freaks out and they start looking for her. Now, what's weird is that the fact that the door opened, and when the door opened, it opened for them, but it didn't open for the other kids. Now, 30 years have passed since the murder of like 1986. But in every year, there's been kids knocking at the door on Halloween, and the door never opened, and it never took or killed nobody else. And there is a reason for that. It's because both Jenna and that boy from 1986 had blood on their hands. And so that's kind of like the key to unlocking like this cursed like door and everything. So you spend like the rest of the movie of them desperately looking for Jenna. Sydney don't want to do it. And like the thing is about Sydney, Galvin, and Amy is that before they went trick-or-treating to like this house, they went to like a haunted house, right? And in the haunted house, Jenna caught Galvin and Amy making out, and they all like, don't tell Sydney and everything. She's like, oh, I won't, and she never did. And so this subplot, I assume, will come up because, you know, the Never Knock house is supposed to like bring out your worst fear. Apparently, that's not Galvin and Amy's worst fear, and this plot is never brought up again. Once again, why do the only two people of color gotta do some crap like this? Anyway, so they spend the majority of the rest of the movie, like I said before, just looking for Jenna. And so Grace starts calling, like, you know, Jenna's phone and everything, and they can hear it ring somewhere near, like, kind of like a park kind of area where a bunch of other people at. So they go there and in the woods, but they can't find Jenna. So you're really worried for Jenna. You're like, where the heck is she? Because then you saw that monster inside the house after, like, she knocked and everything. So it's like, you know, now we know what took like those other kids back in 1986. Sydney is the one who's able to find the phone out in like the woods. And when Grace calls, she answers and lets her know she can't find Grace. But then all of a sudden, she starts making a gasping noise. When we see Sydney next, this like you can't really tell what the heck is going on. But if you look really closely, there's like a really thin silver thing going through her cheeks. Then it's going through the rest of her body. It's really, really, really long, thin needles. So she's like, you know, stumbling around. Her skin is starting to be pale because she's losing blood. Something is stabbing her over and over, but we, the viewers, can't see what it is. And the people like who she keeps interacting with, she's trying to get help. Nobody will help her. They can't see what it is either. They assume she looks the way she does because of her like Halloween costume makeup, but no, she's losing her blood and she's turning pale and everything. And so she's crawling around, and then all of a sudden we can see the monster crawling towards her with a glove on with like needles and everything, similar to Freddy Krueger's glove, but instead of knives is needles. And it just starts like stabbing her over and over again. There's a boy who sees her but doesn't help. He's just scared and runs off. And so like knowing of everybody in the whole town knows of the curse, even our group of characters. And so Galvin, when he finds her dead body, he's all like, she had a fear of needles, so that what must have killed her. So now they're all freaked out and scared, and one by one their fears start to set in. Galvin freaks out when he sees Amy because blood is dripping down her head. Or no, actually not her head, her eyes. Then he runs and he sees like this family and blood is dripping down a woman's forehead. His fear is blood for some bizarre reason. And so when he goes into like, you know, the car, blood is dripping down the windshield and everything, and the monster's in the back of the seat ready to kill him and stuff. As Amy is watching and can't do nothing, because she's scared of like bugs. And so, like, I just wish the CGI and the special effects could have been more, like, more blood, you know what I'm saying? Like, let it gush. And so, like, Amy, she sees, like, the bugs coming out, I think, like, Galvin's mouth or roaches and out her mouth, so she freaks off and she runs off. I wish these, I mean, I get it, like, he took, like, Sheldon took the simplest of fears and made it these people's realities, but just make it more grandiose is what I want, you know? So while this is all going on and Grace and Leah are like desperately trying to like look for their friends as well, look for, you know, Jenna and everything. And I think what was it? They meet up with like Grace and not Grace, but Amy. And so they need a cell phone to try to call like 911 or something like that because now their friends are like dying. But Amy's too afraid. She's all like, there are maggots on my cell phone, but the other two girls can't see it. Then she's taken away by the monster and killed. As the monster is coming after them, they are greeted by like an old man in a van. This mysterious man turns out to be Officer Vance. So Officer Vance, he tells them, you know, he believes them and everything. Now, by this point in time, Grace's leg is like gashed open and he offers to treat it. Now, he's a little bit of a kooky old man and he told them he was spying on them all night because he's been doing this every year for Halloween, spying not on them, but on the house. Back in 1986, after he found the dead bodies and everything, he told other folks, but they won't believe him. And so he started to wonder if what he saw was real or if it was fake. So he's been spying on the house every year, and nobody has died since 1986, been over 30 years. But then this year, these kids, they knock on the door and freaky stuff starts to happen. So he just wanted to make sure if he was kooky in the head or not, which pisses the girls off because they're all like, yo, you could have called the police or something and stuff. He's all like, no, I had to make sure if I'm crazy or not. I don't like this line of dialogue at all. But he tells them, you know, like, he's been doing some research and there's been other killings similar, but like in other towns. And when he looked at the pictures of the house in which these killings happened, they all had the exact same door. So it's not the house, it's the door. How the door gets teleported from place to place, never really explained, but kind of at the end. So like he offers like to help them because, you know, they figure they have to destroy this thing and also get their sister. And I think he told them that like he saw like the sister never made it out the house. So like she's actually inside the house and everything. So they go back towards like the house and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden their fear starts to kick in. And so like Grace believes she can see her sister running around town. So she goes running after her. They go into like a building and like, you know, she can't really find her sister, but Grace is starting to have hallucinations of her dead, burnt mother. Her mother is just constantly like aggravating her and stuff. At some point, she is able to like defeat her mother and stuff because she realizes it wasn't her fault that her mom had died, but she's been living with that guilt the entire time. Now, as for Leah, her and Grace had to get separated, and I forget for what reason, and like what is it? Rance decided to help Leah out. So they're going around a bunch of like bodies and like meat bags and stuff being hung on like, you know, the ceiling. And he's starting to wonder how the heck is he able to see these hallucinations in the monster? And he realizes even though he wasn't at the house, he was still near the house when the curse got activated. And so he dies and everything. And as for Leah, we have no idea what the heck happened to her. We just assume she's dead. So, of course, after defeating the hallucination of her mom, Grace goes back to the house looking for her sister. She deducted that the monster tried to lure them away from the house so they can keep her sister. Now, that part don't make no sense, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So, when she goes inside the house, she's looking for her sister, and she actually finds the real thing. Her sister is actually nailed to the wall. There are nail spikes in her palm of her hand, Jesus style. And yeah. So I don't know how people are gonna feel about that. But she's literally just like crucified on the wall and everything. And her sister is desperately trying to pull the spikes out. Problem is, here comes the monster. And so, like, the monster gets Grace, and she's gone now. And so, Jenna, who's not like afraid of nothing, like pulls the other spike out her hand, and she starts stabbing the monster over and over, but it doesn't kill it. Now, I think the actress Lola, who plays Jenna, I think she might be an adult now, if not 17. In a way, I can critique her acting now. I don't like critiquing it when it's like a little kid. She could have gave a bit more oomph. Now, in the beginning of the movie, she was great. But when it came to fighting the monster off, she kind of, I don't know, it was almost like she was tired and didn't want to give like no performance. It could have been a bit more, you know what I'm saying? Same with a lot of these other stars. Like Kiana could have gave a little bit more oomph. Um, um, what did I say the one girl's name was? Jodella. She could have gave a bit more oomph. Like there are times when like her facial expressions are great, but sometimes it's just like she loses like her dialogue and it gets a little flat sometimes. And like that's kind of weird because when she was a teenager, she was like better. But it was almost like she was just tired. It's like a lot of people were just tired in this movie and stuff. And it's like they lost a bit of oomph every once in a while. But then other times they did like a really good performance in this movie. So she keeps telling the monster she's not afraid, but then later on she succumbs to her fear. She's afraid that she let everybody down. Everybody basically died trying to look for her behind. It was her who knocked on this door and let the monster loose. So they died all because of her, and she realizes that. And so then all of a sudden, Jody busts through like the door with an axe. Not Jody, crap, what's her name? Leah. Leah busts through the door with like an axe. Somehow she survived and somehow she found like an axe. But it doesn't matter because the monster is all like, you know, screw you and everything. Like, Jenna, you ain't afraid of me, you about to be. So he picks Jenna up and just like tosses her towards Leah. And she falls on Leah, and the axe somehow turned around and went inside like the chest of like Leah. She's alive long enough to watch Jenna defeat the monster. How does Jenna defeat the monster? Well, Officer Rance gave that of Grace his gun. Now, when Grace left, she also took his flask and like her lighter. I assume she was gonna like spitfire like the door and everything and kill the monster, similar to what Xena used to do when shooting fire and everything. Also, there's a guy who shoots fire from his mouth at like some kind of carnival thing. Or like the haunted house thing, but this is never brought up again. So Jenna's able to take the gun and she tries to shoot the monster but miss and hit the door. So Jenna starts shooting at the door and the monster's getting hurt. Then all of a sudden Jenna just runs and like spears the door wrestling style and knocks it off its hinges. Somehow this killed the monster and like monster just like turns to flames and turns to ash. Or actually it just turned to ash and turned to flames. And so like I'm all like, that's all it took is knocking the door off the hinges. But whatever, the monster is defeated, or so we thought. Oh, I completely forgot to mention, Leah's fear was a fear of dogs, and also Jenna had a fear of drowning, so they tied her feet, hands, and hung her upside down in a tub. Also, this was a sci-fi original TV movie. At the very end of the movie, we see a construction worker repairing the door, painting it a new color, and putting it up for sale, which is probably explains how it gets transported house to house. But does that mean all those other centuries later, the people defeat the monster and destroy the door and somebody repaired it? This is the part that's a little bit confusing. Also, something that's confusing about the monster is like, okay, this also happened in Sheldon's other work of A Night Before Halloween. It's where you have a curse that warns people of the curse, but then it still kills people by the design of the curse. By what I mean is, like in this movie, after it killed the older boy, it carved never, never knock, letting the people in town know, hey, stay out my house and everything. But then, if that's true, then why does it actually go after people? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like A Nightmare Before Halloween. Like, it's avenging, like, this one girl who got pranked and got put in a coma and later died. But it curses everybody who pulled the prank. And in order to survive, you have to prank somebody else and they have to die. If it's trying to warn you, why does it also kill you in the same manner in which it's trying to warn you? Like, that just doesn't never really make no sense. But all in all, like I said before, this is a pretty good movie, and I guess it's really good in everything. It needs a higher rating in like a 4 point something on IMDb. And I really truly believe this could have been a theatrical movie if they would have had like a bigger budget for like special effects, better looking costume for like the monster, and the acting being a bit better. Because a couple of times in the movie, it tends to lag. Now, wasn't that spooky? Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.